They took one human. One. Just a single officer from a quiet outpost at the edge of nowhere, and they thought that would be the end of it. The Nith Empire didn't realize that when you touch one human, you touch all of them. They didn't know Earth doesn't leave its people behind. They didn't know what kind of storm humanity could build from grief and loyalty. The war that followed began with silence and ended with stars on fire. I am Commander Arlen Voss of the Terran Fleet. This is how the galaxy learned to fear the sound of human engines. The Nith were not monsters, not at first. They were bureaucrats with claws, conquerors by habit. Their empire stretched across 3 spiral arms, built on rules, taxes, and the polite slavery of lesser worlds. They called it the Compact of Order, and they believed themselves civilized. When their ships arrived at the Terran frontier, they expected negotiations, tribute, maybe a little resistance for the historians to admire. Instead, they found Captain Elias Ward. Elias commanded Outpost Epsilon 3, a research platform on the edge of the Orion Rift. 100 personnel, mostly scientists, a handful of security. The Nith frigate Cathori dropped out of warp above them, shadow blotting the sun. Its captain sent a transmission demanding surrender in the usual Imperial phrasing. Compliance guarantees integration. Resistance guarantees nullification. Elias's reply was short. We don't do nullification on Thursdays. The translator struggled with sarcasm. The Nith captain assumed it was defiance. He took the station anyway, sent the humans to labor ships, and reported success to his admirals. He didn't realize he had just committed a species-level mistake. Only one person escaped, a communications tech named Rhea Solace. She got a single signal out before capture. It carried 3 words: Ward taken alive. That was enough. Back on Earth, the signal hit the fleet command network like a pulse of lightning. In less than an hour, the message was echoed through every colony, every mining base, every listening post. Within a day, it had a name: Operation Homebound. The Nith thought humans were fractured, a species of small nations barely held together. They didn't understand that for all our arguments, when one of ours is taken, we become one thing: relentless. Fleet Admiral Harper gave the first order. Bring him home. However far, however long. By the next week, 27 ships had broken from dock, crewed by volunteers only. No orders could have held them back. Mechanics welded armor plates while medics packed blood bags labeled with every human blood type. Kids on Luna Station painted the words, "For Elias," across the hull of the carrier Soul's Wrath. The Nith laughed when their scouts reported this. A handful of human ships, light years from their borders, challenging the empire of 1,000 systems. It was absurd. But the thing about absurdity, it's only funny until it wins. When the human fleet entered Nith territory, they didn't announce themselves with parades or demands. They came in dark, engines low, running cold through asteroid shadows. The first Nith patrol ship vanished without firing a shot. The second found itself boarded, its command deck filled with humans in silent black armor. One message was left on the control screens before the ship was released: "Return him, or we keep coming." The Nith Admiralty still didn't take it seriously. They called it piracy. They called it insolence. But when they sent the cruiser Duralek to crush the human fleet, something happened that no one in the Empire forgot. The humans didn't run. They split. 8 ships against 1 cruiser. The humans scattered across the system, vanishing into sensor fog, letting the Duralek chase shadows. Then, one by one, they reappeared on its flank, its rear, its blind spots. They didn't fire missiles. They fired boarding pods. The Nith saw madness. Humans saw opportunity. When the smoke cleared, the Duralek was still intact, her engines humming. But every gun turret had been welded shut from the inside, every command terminal locked with a human code. The Nith crew found the message carved into the deck with a plasma cutter. "Where is Ward?" Part 2. The Nith Empire called an emergency summit. The humans called it Tuesday. For the first time in centuries, the Nith fleet redeployed around 1 human prisoner. They didn't understand why. The galaxy didn't understand either. Why risk so much for one? Because humans measure value differently. In the human fleet, Admiral Harper addressed her crew. "This isn't about one man. It's about what happens when they think they can take us and nothing happens. We are here to prove them wrong." The fleet's morale was a living thing. Messages streamed from Earth every day, children's drawings, prayers, promises. Soldiers pinned photos of families beside maps of Nith space. Engineers named new engines after the lost, Elias-class drives, capable of burning brighter and faster than their specs ever predicted. Even the stars seemed to lean toward vengeance. The Nith tried diplomacy next. They sent envoys offering Ward's release in exchange for human withdrawal. It might have worked, except by then they'd made a mistake. They'd moved him. They'd transferred Elias to a fortress world called Varnis Prime, deep within Imperial space, surrounded by 5 orbital rings of defense. To them, it was a gesture of control. To humanity, it was a map with an X on it. Operation Homebound became Operation Hammerfall. The humans had no right to win. They were outnumbered 50-1, outgunned, out-teched, out of their minds. But they had something the Nith didn't: desperation disguised as genius. They stopped fighting like a fleet and started fighting like an organism. Each ship became a nerve, each captain a heartbeat. The Soul's Wrath would feign retreat while the corvette Mercy dropped decoy satellites. The destroyer Gallant Dawn hacked into the Nith network using an ancient Earth trick, Morse code pulses disguised as engine noise. The aliens called it impossible. Humans called it Tuesday night tinkering. As the humans advanced, the Nith began to panic. Their admirals demanded to know how a minor species from a backwater world could predict every move. The answer was simple. Humans learn, fast. They adapted to Ninth weapons, Ninth psychology, even Ninth arrogance. And they started winning. On Varnis Prime, Captain Elias Ward didn't know how close rescue was. He was kept in a sterile cell beneath a sky that never changed, questioned daily by officials who didn't understand him. They asked, "Why does your species resist integration?" He answered, "Because we've met empires before. They all fall eventually." They threatened him with exile. He smiled. "I already am." But one night the walls shook. Sirens wailed in alien tones. The guards ran, leaving his door unsealed. And then he heard it. A sound that didn't belong in this place. Deep, rhythmic, echoing through the corridors. Drums. Humans don't use drums in war anymore, not physically. But someone, somewhere in the fleet, had broadcast an old Terran battle march through the comm channels. The sound carried across the planet like thunder. Elias smiled. He knew. They were here. The Battle of Varnis Prime should have been unwinnable. Even the gods of war would have looked at those defenses and shaken their heads. 5 orbital rings, each ring with 1,000 guns, each gun capable of vaporizing a battleship. The Neath called it the Crown of Order. The humans called it the Cage. The first wave wasn't an assault. It was a test. The Gallant Dawn charged the outer ring and took 3 hits before she rammed an entire defense platform, using her dying engines as a torch. The second wave, the Soul's Wrath and her escorts, used the debris as cover, diving straight into the firestorm. The Nith gunner shouted in disbelief. No one charges into a kill zone. No one except humans. Every time the Ninth thought they had us surrounded, we turned the circle inside out. The carrier Endeavor fired its entire hangar bay of fighters, not at the enemy, but straight down into the atmosphere, burning through cloud and ozone. Minutes later, those same fighters came back up through the other side, hitting the ring from below, where no one had thought to build shields. On the ground, Elias had joined a small band of escaped prisoners, a handful of miners, engineers, and 1 doctor. Together they moved through the Undercity while the sky burned. He didn't need orders. He knew what his people would do. They would come for him, and they would not stop until the sky itself was torn open. And they did. The Soul's Wrath broke through the 5th ring, engines screaming like dying suns. Admiral Harper gave one command. All ships push through. It wasn't strategy anymore. It was will. The Nith defenders watched in awe as human ships, smoking and broken, still kept moving. A destroyer missing half its hull was towing another by magnetic clamps, firing both sets of guns at once. A corvette caught fire, vented its crew into pods, and kept flying until it crashed into the main shield generator. By the time the dust settled, the Crown of Order was a halo of molten metal. Elias stood in the courtyard of the Varnus Prime command spire when the shadows fell across him. Human dropships, black against the burning sky. He heard the scream of their engines, the thunder of landing gear. The first soldier to step out was Rhea Solis, the comms tech who'd sent the original signal. Her armor was scorched, her face streaked with grime. "Told you we'd come," she said. Elias laughed, raw and broken. "You took your time." She handed him a rifle. "We brought the whole planet to say hello. The last phase of the battle wasn't clean. It wasn't even victory in the usual sense. The humans were out of fuel, out of munitions, out of everything except the thing that had always carried them: defiance." When the first shock of outrage faded and the message "Ward taken alive" finished echoing through every system, something in humanity changed. The colonies stopped bickering about trade routes. The corporate fleets quietly moved from the stock markets to the shipyards. Old veterans called their commanding officers and said, "One more time, sir." It didn't take orders. It took only the story. One of ours was gone. The news feeds called it the Quiet Gathering. No speeches, no flags, just ships sliding out of their berths all over the Terran sphere. The captains didn't wait for permission. The engineers didn't ask for pay. They just worked. At Fleet Command in Luna orbit, the lights never dimmed. Admiral Harper stood before the star chart, her face lit by the thin glow of 1,000 potential paths. The younger officers argued about strategy. She only said one sentence: "If they've taken one of us, they've declared war on all of us." The Nith Empire, thousands of light years away, didn't even notice. Their intelligence bureaus filed humanity under expansionary primitives. A nuisance, nothing more. When the first Terran strike group crossed into Nith space, the aliens still laughed. A human fleet of 27 ships was a mosquito bite against an empire that commanded 10,000. The Nith commander at the border sent a broadcast to Earth. "Surrender. Return to your farms. You cannot frighten the stars." Harper never answered him. The fleet that moved under her command was unlike any in history. It wasn't built for conquest. It was built to bring someone home. The crews decorated the bulkheads with photos of loved ones, the word Elias scrawled in every language known to humanity. Every ship had one message burned into its comms array: "We do not abandon our own." By the third week of the campaign, the Nith began to understand that something had gone wrong. Patrol stations went dark. Convoys vanished without trace. At first, they blamed pirates. Then they found the wreck of the cruiser Duralek. Every control screen had been overwritten with one phrase, burned into the glass with a laser torch: "Where is Ward?" That phrase spread through Nith space like a plague. Dock workers whispered it. Captains painted over their insignia so the words wouldn't appear. The Admiralty banned it, which of course made everyone say it more. Rhea Solis, the technician who had sent the rescue signal, sat on the bridge of the corvette Mercy. She wasn't a soldier, but no one cared anymore. She had become a symbol, the one who'd refused to let silence win. Harper gave her one order: keep our stories linked. Rhea recorded everything: every victory, every loss, every message from Earth. She played them through the fleet. Every night, a teacher on Mars reading her class's poem for the missing captain. A miner in the belt promising to donate oxygen rations to fuel the fleet's life support. An old woman's voice from Brazil whispering, "Bring him home." The Nith intercepted those broadcasts. They didn't understand why the humans kept sending them. They called them emotional propaganda. They didn't know it was fuel. On Varnus Prime, Captain Elias Ward waited. The Nith interrogators treated him like a curiosity. "Why does your species resist integration?" they asked. He told them, "Because we've met empires before." They didn't know what to do with that answer. The Nith thought loyalty ended at the individual. They thought fear kept order. They couldn't imagine a species that would risk extinction for one man. Sometimes they left the cell doors open, as if daring him to try. He didn't. He was waiting for the sound he knew would come, the sound of engines that don't stop. The first direct clash came at Helion's verge, a system thick with dust and radio storms. The Neath had posted 3 cruisers there, confident no fleet could navigate the interference. The humans didn't navigate it. They listened to it. Lieutenant Kira Dash on the Gallant Dawn figured out that the dust's electromagnetic pulse created a pattern, like heartbeat intervals. She synchronized the fleet's drives to that rhythm, hiding their emissions inside the storm's pulse. The Nith scanners read nothing until the human ships were right on top of them. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, 3 cruisers were drifting, engines dark, and the humans were gone again. The Nith sent reinforcements. They found nothing but empty space and a single broadcast looped on every frequency. The heartbeat pattern of the storm slowed until it sounded like a drum. Back on Earth, when the signal arrived, children tapped it on desks. Soldiers hummed it before sleep. The whole species began to keep time with the fleet. Harper gathered her captains after Helion's verge. "They think we're reckless," she said. "They're wrong. We're patient. We'll come at them like the tide. They'll drown without realizing the water's rising." The next month proved her right. The fleet didn't hit hard. It hit smart. They crippled supply lines instead of chasing glory. They hijacked Nith communication buoys and replaced the code of command with recordings of laughter and music, Earth's own noise invading the Empire's silence. When a Nith battleship tried to jam them, the humans responded by turning the jamming frequency into a song, modulating it into an old Earth melody. The Neath called it auditory warfare. To humans, it was hope in a minor key. And all the while, Rhea's signal went out. 3 words, every 12 hours, on every captured frequency. "Where is Ward?" That was when the Nith High Council finally realized they were losing control. Their warlords demanded to crush the humans. Their administrators demanded to negotiate. But the admirals hesitated. They'd seen the recordings of the Duralek, seen human boarding pods open like jaws. They began to wonder, if these creatures would cross the void for one man, what would they do for a world? The council decided to move their prize. Elias Ward was transferred under heavy guard to Varnus Prime, a fortress world with 5 orbital defense rings. The relocation convoy stretched for 1,000 kilometers, 10 escort ships, a carrier, and 1 prison transport. What they didn't know was that the humans were listening. The Mercy picked up the convoy's quantum signature before it even left orbit. Harper didn't hesitate. "We move," she said. "No delays, no waiting for reinforcements. If we lose him now, we lose the war." The fleet jumped. What followed wasn't strategy. It was instinct. The humans cut power and drifted into the convoy's path, engines cold, hulls hidden among the asteroids. They waited until the Nith ships passed directly over them. Then they lit their drives. The ambush was brutal. Boarding pods punched through armor like needles through fabric. The humans didn't try to destroy the ships. They cut engines and seized control. They weren't fighting for kills. They were fighting for coordinates. Within hours, the Nith flagship was disabled. Its last transmission screamed across half the Empire before going silent. The message was intercepted by a dozen systems, translated by 100 species, and remembered forever. The humans are coming. By the time the Nith fleet regrouped, the humans had vanished again. But they left a trail. Not debris, not signals, but rumor. On every planet they passed, they freed prisoners, healed the wounded, shared water. They didn't occupy, they didn't loot, they just moved on. The aliens couldn't understand that either. Mercy was a word the Nith didn't have. And then, as if to confirm every fear, the humans did something that broke every military rule in existence. They broadcast their next move. Rhea Solis's voice carried across the void. "We're coming to Varnus Prime. We're bringing him home." The Ninth Admiralty laughed. They fortified every ring, every gun, every orbit. They thought they were preparing for war. They weren't. They were preparing for judgment. While the human fleet gathered for the assault, something changed among the Nith soldiers. They began to talk. Some wondered aloud what kind of species fights not for land or resources, but for a single life. Some whispered that humanity's gods must be real, because only gods would care that much. Admiral Kresh, commander of the Varnis defenses, silenced the talk with executions, but even he felt it, the tremor beneath logic. Rhea watched from her console as the fleet aligned into attack formation. She opened a private channel to Harper. "Admiral," she said quietly, "what if we don't make it back?" "We'll make it back," Harper said. "All of us, or none of us." That was the unspoken truth of Operation Homebound. It wasn't about survival. It was about keeping a promise. When the order came to jump, the stars themselves seemed to flinch. 27 ships vanished into the dark, engines roaring like a heartbeat the galaxy would never forget. Elias Ward, in his cell beneath the gray skies of Varnis Prime, felt the floor tremble. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The guards ran, shouting orders, and somewhere above he heard the faint echo of something familiar, a rhythm. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. He smiled. "They're here." The sky over Varnis Prime split open like a wound. For centuries, the Nith Empire had boasted that no enemy could breach their crown of order, 5 concentric orbital rings armed with 1,000 plasma lances and guided by the most advanced targeting systems in the galaxy. The humans didn't see a crown. They saw a cage, and cages are meant to be broken. The fleet arrived in silence, their drives burning low, signatures masked inside a cloud of drifting debris from an old mining field. The Neath defense network caught only echoes, faint energy ripples that their computers dismissed as background noise. The first they knew of the assault was when the night turned white. The carrier Sol's Wrath dropped out of warp directly above the outer ring. At first glance it looked crippled, hull plating scorched, engines flickering. The Ninth gunners almost pitied it. Then they realized too late that its power core was charging beyond regulation limits. Admiral Harper's voice crackled across the fleet. "Outer ring first. No retreat, no delay. If it burns, let it burn." The Sol's Wrath dove into the ring's guns, taking volley after volley. Every hit tore her armor apart, but she didn't slow. When she reached the main defense hub, Harper triggered the overdrive sequence. The explosion rippled outward, shredding the outer ring like glass under a hammer. The shockwave cleared the path for the rest of the fleet. "Godspeed, Harper," Rhea whispered from the Mercy's bridge. "We'll carry it from here." The second ring opened fire, a halo of lightning in orbit. But human ships didn't move like anything the Nith had ever fought. They darted between the streams of plasma, engines flickering in irregular bursts. The Ninth targeting systems couldn't lock on because the humans weren't flying in straight lines. They were dancing. "Keep them guessing," Captain Dash of the Gallant Dawn said. "We're jazz musicians now, people. Improvise!" The corvettes moved in spirals, loops, corkscrews, every trajectory the enemy's computers couldn't predict. When the second ring's gunners tried to coordinate, they found their command lines flooded with noise, earth music, distorted and defiant. One of the alien operators screamed, "They're singing at us!" Yes, they were. Every ship in the fleet broadcast the same rhythm, the old heartbeat pattern from Helion's Verge. It echoed through the Nith systems, merging with sensor feeds and feedback loops until their own computers began to pulse in sync with it. Their machines couldn't decide which signals were real. That was when the Mercy broke through. Rhea's ship was small, built for communications, not war. But she had one weapon the Neath didn't understand: human stubbornness. She flew straight through the gap Harper had made, engines screaming red, weaving between the debris of the outer ring. The hull temperature climbed past safe limits. The crew strapped in and prayed. "Varnis atmosphere in range," the pilot said. "Then dive," Rhea ordered. "Let's knock on their door." Below, Captain Elias Ward had stopped counting the hours. The walls of his cell shook as explosions thundered above. He smiled even when the guards stormed in, shouting, "You did this!" He stood slowly. "No," he said. "We did. They hit him." He laughed blood, because he knew the sound now, the rumble, the rhythm, the heartbeat. They were coming. He was still laughing when the lights died and the cell door slid open. A figure stepped inside. Human armor blackened from fire, visor cracked. "Captain Ward?" a voice asked. He recognized it instantly. "Rhea Solace," he said. "You've got terrible timing." She grinned behind the glass. "Took a wrong turn at Helion's Verge. You ready to go home?" Ward nodded once. "Always." They moved fast through the corridors. The prison was chaos, alarms, smoke, alien voices screaming over each other. Every hallway shook as another orbital ring collapsed. At the landing bay, a squad of Nith soldiers blocked their way. For a second, everyone froze. Humans and Nith stared at each other, tired, bleeding, terrified. Then Ward did something insane. He stepped forward, weapon lowered. "Don't," he said. "This isn't your fight anymore." One of the Nith aimed anyway. Rhea fired first. The shot cracked through the air like a thunderclap. The others dropped their weapons. Not out of fear, out of exhaustion. "Go," one of them said softly, "before someone braver stops us." Ward hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." Outside, the battle was reaching madness. The third and fourth rings had begun to collapse inward, their fragments raining into the atmosphere like meteors. The fifth and final ring, the command crown, tried to retreat, pulling away from orbit. Harper's second-in-command, Commander Sato, took over from the bridge of the Gallant Dawn. "They're running," he said. "Not yet. Not while our people are still down there." He opened the fleet-wide channel. "Form up. We cover the extraction." Half the ships were wrecks, patched together by willpower and duct tape. But they answered. The Vigilant, Endeavor, Mercy, Gallant Dawn all turned their guns upward, not to fight but to shield. When the Nith reinforcements arrived from the outer system, they found the humans forming a defensive ring of their own, ships overlapping like scales, engines glowing. They weren't attacking. They were guarding something behind them. "What are they protecting?" asked the Nith Admiral. His censor officer replied, voice shaking, "A single dropship leaving the surface." The Admiral's eyes widened. "The hostage." "Destroy it!" They fired. The human formation didn't break. They took the hits, hulls melting, decks venting into vacuum, but they held. Inside the dropship, Rhea piloted with bleeding hands. "They're aiming for us," she said. Ward looked out the viewport. "No," he whispered. "They're aiming for all of us." He keyed the comm to open broadcast. "To the fleet, tell them thank you. Tell them we're coming home." Then the impossible happened. A transmission came through on every Nith channel. Admiral Harper's voice, though her ship had been lost in the first assault. "This is the Soul's wrath. To all ships, fall back to my coordinates, now." The Ninth laughed. "A ghost ship?" But the humans didn't laugh. They turned, because they knew Harper wouldn't stop, not even in death. From behind the planet, the Soul's wrath appeared again, burning like a newborn star. Her hull was cracked open, half molten, her crew long gone. But her automated systems were still alive, guided by Harper's last orders. The carrier's reactor was unstable, one last heartbeat waiting to explode. Rhea's dropship cleared the atmosphere just as Harper's ship collided with the fifth ring. The explosion lit the void brighter than any sunrise. The shockwave caught the ninth reinforcements and scattered them like ash. For one moment, every frequency across the Empire carried the same sound, the deep, pulsing thrum of the human heartbeat. Then silence. When the light faded, Varnus Prime was no longer a fortress. The crown of order was gone. The human fleet, what remained of it, drifted among the debris. Rhea's dropship docked with the Mercy. Ward stumbled onto the bridge, exhausted but alive. The crew erupted in cheers and sobs. Rhea sat down, trembling. "We did it," she whispered. Ward looked out the viewport at the broken sky. "No," he said quietly. "She did it." They all understood. Admiral Harper had given everything, ship, crew, herself, to buy this victory. "Set course for home," Ward said finally. "Let the galaxy know what happens when you take one of ours." The fleet turned toward the long road back, engines flaring in unison. Their formation spelled a single word in Terran Morse code. Dots and dashes across the stars. Home. The journey home took 3 months. 3 months through cold space littered with the ghosts of heroes. The fleet that had left Earth as 27 ships returned as 5, battered, burned, but still breathing. Their engines coughed light like dying suns. Their hulls were held together by steel, faith, and grief. And yet across every comm line, one rhythm endured. Boom, boom, boom. The heartbeat that had carried them through every battle now guided them home. By the time the Mercy and her surviving escorts reached Sol, the news had already spread across the stars. They had no idea how. Their long-range transmitters had been destroyed. Their signals lost in the radiation storms, but somehow, the galaxy had learned what happened at Varnis Prime. On every human world, people watched the skies. When the fleet finally appeared, battered silhouettes emerging from warp, the colonies erupted in cheers that shook the continents. They didn't see soldiers returning from war. They saw the proof of a promise kept. The promise that no one, not one human, not one voice, would ever be left behind. Earth's orbital defense net opened like a curtain. Civilian ships lined the approach lanes, thousands of vessels flashing their running lights in unison. From orbit, it looked like the planet itself was blinking tears. "Fleet homebound, this is Earth Command," said a trembling voice over the channel. "Welcome home." On the bridge of the Mercy, Rhea covered her face and wept. Elias Ward stood beside her, silent, jaw tight. He had imagined this moment 100 times in captivity, but never like this. "Admiral Harper should be here," he said softly. "She is," Rhea whispered. "Every light you see up there? That's her." The official debrief took days, but it wasn't the generals or the politicians who mattered. It was the people. Dock workers left flowers on the airlocks. Children drew chalk hearts on the hull of the Mercy. Veterans from the old wars saluted as the crew disembarked. Admiral Harper's name was carved into the fleet's memorial wall alongside every soul lost at Varnis. Her final words, pulled from her last transmission, were etched beneath it. "Elias is free." "That's enough." No one could read it without crying. The Nith Empire, meanwhile, was silent. Their fleets withdrew behind their own borders, their propaganda channels cut off. On the outer colonies, Ninth ships stopped patrolling entirely. For the first time in centuries, their empire trembled, not because of weapons, but because of memory. Word spread that the Ninth Senate had held a closed session. The recordings leaked weeks later. You could hear the fear in their voices. They destroyed the Imperium's hand with 5 ships. They lost everything. They didn't lose. They chose. And then the final line from a trembling senator. "The humans do not win wars. They end them." Elias Ward never returned to active service. His body had healed, but his soul had seen too much. He bought a small house by the sea on Luna, where the tides echoed the rhythm of the old fleet drums. Visitors often found him sitting by the water staring at the stars. When asked why he didn't write his memoirs, he only said, "Some things don't need to be written. They just need to be remembered." But one evening, years later, a small shuttle landed near his home. Rhea Salas stepped out. Her hair was streaked with silver now, her eyes still fierce. She carried a datapad, old and cracked. "You kept it," Ward said, smiling. "Of course," she replied. "Harper's code, the logs, the recordings, everything. The fleet wants to turn it into a memorial archive." He nodded slowly. "Good. People should know what it cost." Rhea sat beside him. For a while, they just listened to the waves. "You ever think about them?" she asked. "Every day." "You think the Nith learned anything?" Ward chuckled softly. "Oh, they learned. They learned the one thing that scares them most, that humans can't be conquered because we fight for each other, not for power." Rhea smiled faintly. "Then maybe that's enough." He looked at her, his voice barely a whisper. It was always enough. Decades passed. The scars of the war faded, but its legend did not. The tale of Varnis Prime spread beyond human space, carried by traders and smugglers, miners and priests. It reached worlds that had never heard of Earth, and yet repeated the story like a prayer. They said it began with one human taken hostage. They said the stars themselves burned to bring him home. The Ninth Empire slowly changed. It was subtle at first. Their armies grew smaller. Their slave markets emptied. They built monuments, not to victory, but to remembrance. On Varnus Prime, now a dead world reborn, a single statue stands amid the glassed plains. A human hand extended upward, open, not in threat, but in offering. Beneath it, carved in both languages, are 5 words that shook the galaxy. No one gets left behind. The Nith call it the Covenant of Harper. The humans call it the Promise. Back on Earth, the Fleet Academy teaches the story every year, not as history, but as warning and as hope. Cadets learn about Harper's final charge, Rhea's defiance, Ward's survival. They study not the weapons or the tactics, but the heart that drove them. In the Great Hall, a single relic hangs suspended in a stasis field, a fragment of the Soul's Wrath's hull, still bearing the scorch marks from Varnus Prime. Across it, faint but visible, are letters burned by plasma. Bring him home. Every cadet touches it before graduation. Every captain whispers it before battle. And somewhere in the quiet vacuum between stars, the heartbeat still echoes. Boom, boom, boom. The rhythm of humanity. The rhythm of home. Elias Ward died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 93. On the night of his passing, every ship in the Terran fleet dimmed its lights for 1 minute. No orders were given. It simply happened across hundreds of worlds, as if the universe itself remembered. When Rhea received the news, she opened the archive one last time. The recordings played in sequence, the laughter, the music, Harper's voice, the heartbeat. She smiled through tears. Then she looked up at the night sky and whispered, "We brought him home, Admiral. We always will." The stars above seemed to shimmer brighter for a moment, as if nodding back, because in the end, the Neath were right about one thing. Humans are dangerous, not because of what we destroy, but because of what we refuse to let go. They took one man. They got the whole species. And in doing so, they learned the one truth that still echoes through the galaxy today. You can defeat a human fleet, but you can never break the human heart. The homeward journey was quiet. The engines of the surviving ships whispered instead of roared. The voices across the comms were low, careful, almost reverent. It wasn't victory they were carrying back toward Sol. It was something heavier, memory, and the silence of those who would never return. The Mercy led the survivors through the dark lanes between stars. The gallant Dawn limped along behind her, patched with plates scavenged from wreckage. A single corvette, Vigil, followed at half power, its crew down to 20. No one complained. They moved together like a single wounded creature that still refused to die. The Ninth Empire didn't pursue them. No one did. Space itself seemed to pull back, letting them go. Rhea sat on the bridge of the Mercy, staring out through the cracked viewport at the streaking lines of hyperspace. Captain Ward stood beside her, one arm bound in a sling, his uniform still torn from the battle. "They'll make songs about this," she said. Ward shook his head. "Songs end. This won't." When the fleet fell out of warp near the moon, every defense satellite on the Terran net came alive. At first, Earth Command didn't believe the readings. The ships returning barely matched the registry data. Hulls twisted, engine signatures warped. But then the codes began to play, heartbeat rhythm, 2 long, 1 short, over and over. Boom, boom, boom. "Open the gates," Admiral Patel said from Earth Command. His voice cracked. "Let them in." All over the world, people stopped what they were doing. The news feeds interrupted everything. Screens filled with the live feed from orbit. What they saw were 5 ships crawling home through the void, glowing with the orange burn of damage, their trails lit by the reflection of the sun. They looked like ghosts. The crowds that gathered in every city didn't cheer at first. They just watched. Then, as one, they began to clap, slowly, steadily, in time with that old rhythm. Boom, boom, boom. The fleet docked over Luna Base. Rhea stepped out first, her face streaked with oil and ash. She hadn't slept in 4 days. The docking crews froze when they saw her, then saluted. Behind her came Captain Ward, shoulders straight, eyes hollow, but steady. There were speeches, of course, medals, ceremonies. Politicians spoke of courage and duty, but none of that reached the crew. The only words that mattered came later, when the survivors gathered in the hangar, surrounded by the wreckage of the ships that hadn't returned. Ward stepped up onto a crate. "We came back," he said. "Not because we were stronger or faster. We came back because someone believed we would." Admiral Harper believed. Every engineer who welded a hull, every child who sent a message believed. That's what carried us. He looked at Rhea. "We aren't a fleet anymore. We're a family. And families don't forget." Rhea nodded, tears cutting through the soot on her cheeks. "We bring them home," she said. The hangar repeated it, a whisper that grew into thunder. "We bring them home." The Nith Empire tried to rewrite what had happened. For a time, their channels claimed the destruction of Varnus Prime had been a natural disaster, a reactor collapse, an unfortunate anomaly. But the story leaked anyway, first as rumor, then as fact. And when it reached the outer worlds, it ignited something no empire could contain. The slaves they had kept for generations began to hum the human rhythm in their work camps. The miners tapped it on the walls of their tunnels. Soldiers on frontier garrisons found graffiti scrawled in Terran letters, "No one left behind." The Ninth called it a virus. They were right. It spread faster than they could silence it. On one world, a Nith general refused to fire on striking workers because he heard them humming that tune. On another, a merchant captain lowered his guns when he saw a Terran freighter bearing the name Saul's Wrath II. The idea of mercy had become contagious. The Senate met in secret to decide what to do. They argued for weeks. In the end, they did something the galaxy never thought they would. They surrendered. Not to Earth, but to the truth of what had happened. They issued a decree across all systems. Humanity is not to be provoked, annexed, or interfered with. Their worlds are sovereign. Their citizens are to be treated with respect. It wasn't law. It was fear dressed as diplomacy. But it changed everything. Years passed. Elias Ward retired to a quiet home by the Atlantic, where he could listen to waves instead of engines. He never remarried. He spent his days fishing, writing letters to the families of those who hadn't returned. Every letter ended the same way. "They brought me home. I will spend what time I have left earning that." Rhea stayed with the fleet. She rose through the ranks until she commanded her own ship, the New Mercy. Sleeker and faster, painted with the same blue stripes as the old one. Every cadet wanted to serve under her. They said she never shouted orders. She just said, "You know what they died for," and everyone moved. One evening, years later, she received a message from Luna. Ward had passed away in his sleep. The file attached was short, his final request. It read, "Scatter my ashes in orbit over Varnus Prime. Tell them we came back." Rhea made the trip herself. Varnus Prime was quiet now. The rings were gone, replaced by a single orbital monument built from the wreckage of the Nith and human ships. It was simple, an open hand of metal reaching upward, its palm engraved in both languages. No one gets left behind. She opened the airlock and let the ashes drift. The particles caught the starlight and shimmered like silver dust, spreading across the void. Rhea whispered, "Rest easy, Captain. The stars remember." She stayed until the light faded, then turned her ship toward home. The Terran fleet changed after that war. They built fewer battleships and more rescue vessels. They trained not just to fight, but to protect. Every ship carried the same inscription on its hull. For Harper. For Ward, for all of us. New recruits learned the story of Varnus Prime on their first day. They watched old footage of Harper's voice cutting through static, of the soul's wrath diving into the crown of order. Some cried. Some saluted. All understood, and every graduation ceremony ended the same way. The lights dimmed. The instructors spoke in unison. "They took one of us." The cadets answered, "And we brought him home." Then the drums began, slow, heavy, the sound of engines, of hearts, of humanity. Boom, boom, boom. As for the Nith, they changed too. Not all at once, not easily. But on Varnus Prime, the new governor ordered the construction of a school for every species, not just their own. On the first day of class, the children sang a song the humans had left behind. Its words simple and soft. If one falls, we all rise. Somewhere out beyond the edge of mapped space, Traders tell stories of Terran ships arriving at stranded colonies, at wrecks, at pirate ambushes. They say those ships don't ask for payment. They just ask one question: who's missing? Because that's what humanity became after Varnus Prime. Not conquerors, not saviors, but the species that answers the call. And the call always begins the same way: a faint signal across the dark. 3 words, steady as a heartbeat. Where is Ward? Generations later, historians would debate how a handful of humans humbled an empire. They would write theories about tactics, strategy, luck. They would argue over the morality of vengeance and the economics of war. But the veterans knew the truth. It wasn't technology. It wasn't numbers. It was the oldest thing we have. We remember. We hold. We bring each other home. That's why the stars themselves whisper it now, in the static between frequencies, in the hum of engines at the edge of sleep. They took one human hostage, and Earth raised an armada to bring him home. And though the fleets may one day fade, and the worlds may crumble to dust, the rhythm will never stop. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of a promise kept. The sound of humanity forever coming home.